So, for the past 48 hours, we've basically lived inside the Sonic Racing CrossWorlds Open Network Test. We've done the Grand Prix, we've grinded the online matches, we've spent probably way too long in the customization menus, and we've come away with a lot to talk about. This isn't just a simple, is it good situation. This game is a genuine paradox. It contains one of the most exciting, forward-thinking ideas I've seen in a kart racer in the last decade, but it's wrapped in a package that, at times, feels frustrating, underbaked, and fundamentally confused about what it wants to be. So today, we're going deep. This isn't just first impressions, we're going to break down the genius, the good, the genuinely bad, and the technically ugly of what we experienced. We're going to talk about the ghost of Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed that hangs over this entire game. And by the end, we'll try to answer the big question. Does CrossWorlds have what it takes to even compete with the king, Mario Kart, or is it going to need a serious pit stop before launch? Let's get into it. Okay, let's start with the absolute best part of this entire experience. The headline feature, the CrossWorlds mechanic. And let me be clear, this is not a gimmick. This is a game changer. The trailers don't do it justice. You start a race on what feels like a fairly standard version of Emerald Hill. You're learning the turns, you're finding your racing line, you're getting into a groove for lap 1. Then, as you cross the finish line to start lap 2, the sky rips open. The track in front of you deconstructs and rebuilds itself into chemical plant. The green grass is replaced by purple industrial sludge, gentle slopes become tight, 90-degree corners, and hazards you weren't expecting. Your entire muscle memory from the first lap is thrown out the window. That corner you were drifting perfectly, it's gone. That straightaway, where you use your boost, it's now a series of winding turns. It forces you to be constantly alert, constantly adapting. But the real magic happens on the final lap of a Grand Prix. The game takes elements from all 3 of the previous tracks and mashes them together into a chaotic greatest hits finale. You'll be boosting through a loop from Emerald Hill that suddenly dumps you onto a floating platform from the Persona-themed Joker track, before transitioning into a hazardous stretch from Chemical Plant. It is, without a doubt, one of the coolest things I've seen in this genre. It ensures that no race ever feels truly repetitive. From a design perspective, it's brilliant. It addresses the core issue of track fatigue that can set in after you've played the same course 100 times in other racers. Here, you're essentially playing 3 or 4 different tracks in one. We had moments of genuine awe watching these transitions happen in real time. It's a fantastic concept, and the execution of the visual spectacle is a 10 out of 10. If the entire game was built to this standard, we'd be looking at a masterpiece, but it isn't. So, beyond that core mechanic, what else did we like? Well, the amount of content available in just this network test was pretty impressive. The character roster is solid, pulling from a good range of the Sonic universe, and the inclusion of Joker from Persona 5 as a crossover character right out of the gate was a great touch. He fits the slick, stylish vibe of the menus and UI perfectly. But the real star of the show here is the vehicle customization. This isn't just cosmetic. This is a deep, granular system that genuinely affects how you play. We're talking front parts, rear parts, wings, tires, horns, you name it. Each part modifies your stats. Top speed, acceleration, handling, boost, and a new cross stat which seems to affect how well you do in the CrossWorlds sections. We spent a solid hour just in the garage building different karts. We made a high acceleration tails build with garbage top speed designed to get out in front early. It worked until we got to a long straightaway and everyone blew past us. Then we built an absolute tank for Knuckles. All top speed and boost, but it handled like a boat. Finding that perfect balance for your playstyle feels like a mini game in itself, and it adds a strategic layer of depth that's genuinely welcome. You can save your loadouts, and we can see ourselves having specific builds for specific types of tracks or events in the full game. Major props to the developers for this system. It's a huge step up from previous games. We also have to give a shout out to the Grand Prix mode's rival system. In between races, your main rival will pop up and trash talk you. It's a small thing, but having Shadow show up and tell me my performance was pathetic after I beat him gave the mode so much more personality. It's a fantastic little touch. Okay, let's get into the part of the game that had us the most conflicted and honestly the most frustrated. The core driving. How do I put this? The handling in Sonic Racing. CrossWorlds feels wrong. It's floaty, it's slippery. There's a bizarre disconnect between your speed and the feeling of momentum. We'd be hitting a boost pad, seeing the visual effects flare up, but the kart itself felt like it was gliding through molasses. There's no weight, no satisfying grip as you power slide through a corner. The drifting is a key part of any kart racer, and here it just feels imprecise. We found ourselves constantly oversteering or understeering, not because we timed it wrong, but because the physics just feel inconsistent. It lacks the tight, responsive, skill-based drift that made Team Sonic Racing and especially Transform so incredibly satisfying to master. We never had that aha moment where the controls just clicked. It remained a constant source of friction throughout our entire playtime. And that brings us to the item system and on-screen clutter. Look, we love the chaos of a good kart racer, but CrossWorlds cranks the dial to a level that often feels less like fun and more like a sensory overload. The screen is constantly filled with explosions, particle effects, and UI pop-ups. In a 12-player race, trying to discern what's happening in front of you is a genuine challenge. The items themselves feel generic. You have your standard rocket projectile, your trap to drop on the ground, your boost. It all works, but it lacks the creativity and personality of the Wisp speed from previous games or the iconic shells and bananas of Mario Kart. And the balance feels skewed entirely towards chaos. We had multiple races where we'd be holding first place for 2.5 laps, driving perfectly, only to be hit by a relentless barrage of 6 or 7 items in the final 20 seconds, sending us all the way back to 9th place with absolutely nothing we could do about it. It often felt like our skill on the track didn't matter. The race was just going to be decided by a random lottery of item throws in the final moments. For some, that might be fun. For us, it felt cheap. We can't talk about this game without addressing the elephant in the room, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. For many, myself included, that game isn't just a great Sonic racer, it's one of the greatest arcade racers ever made, and CrossWorlds is inevitably going to be compared to it. Frankly, in many ways, it doesn't hold up. Transformed was built on a foundation of incredible mechanical depth. The land, sea, and air transformations weren't just a visual gimmick, they were a core strategic element. You had to master 3 different handling models. You had to know when to transform early to cut a corner by flying, or when to stay on the water to hit a specific boost pad. That strategic layer is completely absent here. And while the CrossWorlds mechanic is visually spectacular, it's a passive event. It happens to you. You don't make a choice. The track just changes and you react. It doesn't replace the active, skill-based decision-making of the transformation system from Transform. The handling, as we mentioned, is also a massive step back. The sense of speed, the satisfying boost chaining drift system, it's just not here. It feels like in the pursuit of creating something new with CrossWorlds, they've lost the magic that made their previous kart racers so beloved. I think many longtime fans of the series are going to play this and feel a sense of profound disappointment that the gameplay loop they fell in love with a decade ago is gone. It's a tough legacy to live up to, and right now, CrossWorlds is struggling under that weight. Alright, let's talk about the technical performance, and remember, this is an open network test. The entire point is to stress test the servers and find bugs, so we can forgive some issues. But some of the things we saw were genuinely alarming for a game that launches in a matter of weeks. Let's start with the online functionality itself. Matchmaking was a complete roll of the dice. Sometimes we find a full lobby in 30 seconds. Other times we'd be sitting in a queue for 5 to 10 minutes, only for the lobby to fail and kick everyone out. We experienced numerous disconnects mid-race. Lag was also a noticeable issue, with the opponent karts jittering and jumping around the track. For a test specifically designed to evaluate the network, the results were not encouraging. On PC, the performance was okay. We were running on a fairly high-end rig, and while we could mostly hold a solid frame rate, we noticed significant stuttering and frame drops during the CrossWorlds transitions. It seems loading in the next track's assets on the fly is causing some major performance hits. This is something they absolutely have to optimize before launch. But now we have to talk about the Nintendo Switch version, and there's no way to sugarcoat this. In its current state, it is an absolute disaster. The game targets 30 frames per second, and it struggles constantly to even maintain that. The moment more than a few racers are on screen with items going off, the frame rate tanks. It becomes a choppy, stuttering mess that is genuinely difficult to play. The input lag feels significantly higher than on other platforms, making the already tricky handling even more frustrating. And visually, it's a huge downgrade. We're talking blurry textures, aggressive pop-in of environmental details, and a resolution that often looks sub-HD It looks and feels like a port that the hardware is just not capable of running properly. This is made so much worse by the news that SEGA is planning a separate, paid upgrade version for the Switch 2 down the line. So they're launching this version, which feels borderline unacceptable, and asking current Switch owners to buy it with the knowledge that a better version is coming later that they'll have to pay for again. It feels incredibly anti-consumer, and it puts a huge asterisk on the biggest potential market for this game. If you're planning on getting this for the Switch, based on this test, we would strongly advise you to wait. So, after a full weekend with Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, where do we land? This game is one of the most frustrating almost I've played in a long time. The core concept of the CrossWorlds mechanic is legitimately brilliant. The customization is deep and rewarding. The presentation and personality are, for the most part, fantastic. There is a diamond of a game in here, but it's buried under layers of rough, unpolished, and frankly baffling design decisions. The floaty, unsatisfying handling, the overly chaotic item system, and the alarming technical state of the game, especially on Switch, are massive problems. These aren't small tweaks, some of these feel like fundamental issues with the game's core design. Can they fix it before launch? The network stability and performance bugs? Maybe. But can they fix the core feel of the driving? Can they rebalance the entire item system? I'm not so sure. Right now, Sonic Racing CrossWorlds feels like a game at war with itself. It's an innovative, forward-thinking racer that's also a frustrating, clumsy one. It wants to honor the legacy of its predecessors while simultaneously abandoning what made them great. We went into this weekend hoping for a Mario Kart killer. What we found is a game that first needs to figure out how to get out of its own way, but that's just our take after sinking a ton of hours into the test. What about you? Did you get a chance to play? What did you think of the handling? Were you blown away by the CrossWorlds mechanic? And what platform did you play on? Let us know everything down in the comments. We're going to be reading through all of them. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our future coverage. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.